My name is Francesca Conti, and I will be teaching for you a course on the fundamentals of sociology. So the course is going to be divided into 6 sessions and 6 Q&A. And today we will start by considering what sociology is as a discipline and how it started and the main theoretical foundation of it during the 19th centuries. And then we will move on to something that's slightly more contemporary, and we will start with Seabright Mills and the concept of the sociological imagination that he created in the 1950s to describe modernity in the United States and its issues. So let's start from the beginning though. And what is sociology and how has this discipline came about? Now, sociology, it's a very kind of new discipline within academia, and it started in the 19th century Europe. So the first scholars that studied society or tried to study society scientifically were Marx and Weber and Emil Durkheim. So 3 European scholars that were interested in how society was changing and the origins of capitalism. And if we want to try to find a basic definition for sociology as a discipline, we can start thinking about the kind of possibility of studying society scientifically. And so a basic definition of sociology would be something like the scientific or systematic study of society and of social interaction. And within the field of sociology, there are a lot of theoretical perspective and different methods. So the discipline has changed considerably since its beginning, and is now a very open and very global discipline that look at very different society, different organization, different patterns of behavior, and so on. So you will find that some of these early insights, perhaps they seem kind of not so socially relevant to what are the issues that we are facing nowadays, but some of these ideas could also be inspiring to put what we see in society today into a kind of broader perspective. So what are the main historical influences in sociology? So there is, first of all, the concept of evolutionism and the origins of capitalism. Now, evolutionism was particularly influential in 19th centuries because at the time scholars were really trying to debate and trying to understand how did human society evolved throughout history. And they were thinking about a linear progression, so steps, stages that each society would go through. And that at the time it was considered that, you know, the Industrial Revolution in Europe has created a really a big jump in terms of evolution. So the question was whether all societies around the world would do the same things, and they were destined to do so. So evolutionism was the kind of school of thought in which these ideas were discussed, and there was a kind of tendency to believe that this was possible, but that somehow Europe has managed to evolve in this trajectory before other countries. The second question would be about capitalism, and in particular industrial capitalism in the Western world, so in particular again Europe and North America. So how was this industrial capitalism possible? Why was the Industrial Revolution possible? And what kind of society were emerging in Europe as a result of this Industrial Revolution? And, you know, historically then there was also another big influence which was the French Revolution as well. So how were these changes possible, and were other society destined to go through the same steps? So this was what these early scholars were trying to debate. The Industrial Revolution, it was particularly important because it changed the ways in which people were used to live and created new jobs and new opportunity, but also forced people to move to these bigger cities where these jobs were available. So you see a progressive move from the countryside to the city, and from, you know, the kind of a more agricultural rural world to a more industrial setting, so with you know, both men and women and children working in big factories and going through all kinds of transformation in terms of how they used to live, their habits, their, let's call it with a modern term, lifestyles, and usually condition. So the Industrial Revolution changed society. You can think about the main technological innovation, train lines being, constructed to connect different towns and cities and sell goods and so on. And you can think about, the kind of technological change that we are seeing in today's society since, the internet was created as something that, change our life very rapidly to the same, as it took place during, these early centuries and, with the same kind of impact. All of a sudden, life was different and the communication started to be different and so on. So this early question on how society was changing as a result of both capitalism and the Industrial Revolution were very important. And for these early scholars that tried to propose what we would call grand theories. And grand theory means big theories that try to make sense of society as a whole. And these early scholars, Marx, Durkheim, and Weber, proposed their grand theories about the world and about what human life was about during this time, how society was working, and also the many different kinds of forces that operated within it. So, what are we going to do with all this information now? So we're going to look at how the different approaches to society of these early scholars can still help us to try to make sense of the changes that we see in society, and also we try to also look at how these macro changes that we see in society can have an impact on individual behavior. So we try to make sense of society and we try to make sense of its structure. And this is the very first goal of most researchers. So there is a traditional, let's say, focus on Western Europe and North America, so it's a bias within the discipline, a limitation, if you like, especially during the 19th centuries. And there is this kind of bias in these early writings, and we can try to address that by remembering that, of course, what applied in a country in the 19th century does not apply necessarily to today's society. And, bringing a little bit more flexibility in what you will learn. But it's interesting to see how these early theories develop a method of looking at society, and this is what we're going to focus on. Now, what are the skills that you are going to learn by studying sociology and at the end of this course? First of all, I hope that you will appreciate the study of society from a different perspective, and that you will be able to explain and exemplify this concept and theories. So you'll be able to talk about it and to compare these different views and to reflect in a way that we call theoretically informed, meaning taking this theory, this concept into consideration. And that you will be able to see, to visualize how the structure of society works according to different theories, and how this structure then affects us as human beings and as members of the society in which we live. Now, by the end of this lesson, you should also be able to explain what sociology is, learn about the discipline and its insight. And sociology is a very big field, so most of the time many people use sociological insights, sociological ideas to make sense of also what's happening in the world from different perspectives. So it's a big kind of mediating force between the other disciplines. And there are many sub-disciplines that emerged historically from sociology, and then they became their own kind of field of knowledge. For example, marketing is also very grounded on sociological insight. Demography, the study of population and its movements and its changes. Criminology as the study of crime. And all these disciplines originally were coming from sociology, and then they developed such a big field that they became kind of independent to a certain extent from it. But you'll see that a lot of this insight could be useful even if you're not studying sociology for your degree, or you're just taking a class as a foundation, like in this case. So This is very important to note, and it's also a very important distinction to make. So sociology can really inspire some kind of thoughts, and that then people and scholars can apply in different ways, and they can apply in different ways by using just some of the concepts, some of the ideas that they just learn about, or they can just think about how this still applies to certain group within society and not others, and this kind of dynamics and their origins and how they think this might change in the future. Now, another important point to make is that despite the possibility of studying society, sociology is still not a science in the sense, is not like astronomy or anything like that, that studies something in a lab and then the result may be stable through time. And sociology cannot do that, cannot study things that are fixed in time, because society, by definition, is always changing. And so you're studying something that is constantly evolving and that is constantly transforming itself because of different forces. So the goal of sociology is to look at these forces and how they create change and in which way this change operates. And so in this sense, sociology is quite different. So we can think of it as a systematic study of society, perhaps not a scientific one in a more traditional way of thinking about science. So its insight can be very important and can support, for example, policy. That's one kind of major application. Social policy, policies that have to do with improving certain area in society, like education, healthcare, or even environmental laws that now are very hot topic of debate. And we can think about how sociological insight can also help people who work in business by offering insight about how people are living and what the kind of group behavior tend to be and why is it changing and everything like that. And finally, I would also like to make a distinction between sociology and psychology, because when we talk about human behavior, many people are expecting some kind of discussion into the kind of human personality or the many different aspects that make up who we are as a person. Now, sociology cannot do that. Sociology can look at group behavior, and they can look at, we can look at group behavior in a way that we try to make some generalization about society that are grounded in research, but it's still a generalization that looks at specific groups and at different type of social phenomena. We cannot explain why a certain person decided to act in a specific way on a specific day. We cannot go in that direction. We have to accept that we work at a different level. So we are not going to look into the deep reason why people act in the way they do, but we're looking at how society creates the context in which this action takes meaning, or in which this action makes sense for the person and for the people around it. So we are looking at how communities and groups within society operate and how they interact within one another. And that's perhaps the most interesting dimension for us, in fact, is to look at social interaction and how this social interaction is shaped by different kinds of conditions and how it's altered by time and different kinds of thoughts and transformation that happen at different level. So often what sociology does is not to look only at the macro level, but to look at what we call the meso level, the level in between, the bigger forces that shape human history and the individual experience within it. And we will look at this level in particular with the concept of the sociological imagination that is coming next. And so in the following session, we will be looking at how this play a role in the discipline and how we can develop the sociological imagination. So this is the end of your very first session.